Thank you, Michael. Oh, it's not working now?
Hello.
There you go. Thank you, Michael. Well, first of all, thank you for coming here today for this. It means a lot to me. Actually, when Michael was telling me that it sold out within like seconds, I was like, really? All right, I guess Fort Myers needs a haunted house. So basically, I'm 33 years old. I got started probably when I was always really artistic. Is it going in and out?
It's good.
Is it fine?
Yeah.
Am I just freaking out or something?
Yeah.
I think it keeps sliding when I'm talking.
Yeah.
I was saying I'm 33 years old now, but when I started my career in makeup effects, I was 26, 27 years old, and that's really when it started in LA. Before that, I was always really artistic. It started at a young age, a lot of drawing and painting, which most kids do when they're little. They're not straight out sculpting and stuff like that. So when I started as a little kid, I remember in grade school entering art shows and going through all the way through high school, entering art shows, and it was always painting or drawing. And then it wasn't until I graduated high school that I got into sculpting. And when I started sculpting, I wound up getting back with my old high school art teacher and be like, hey, do you have any clay? I really want to start sculpting. And he was like, yeah, you can get some clay. So I wound up going to the school, buying hundreds and hundreds of pounds of clay from him, and started sculpting. And I was probably like 26 when I started sculpting with everything. And I guess what started the whole haunted house idea was my dad. My dad and my mom wound up doing a haunted house back in '94, in '95, '96. We did it for a few years. And I guess as being a little kid, 9 years old, running around, having a haunted house at your house, and it was like freaking awesome. And it was a complete maze, and we had hundreds of people show up the first year, and then the next year it just got bigger and bigger, and all these people wanted to come to it. And it got so big to where my dad's like, yeah, this is getting out of control, and we just have to shut it down and not do it anymore. So it was back, years went by, working a normal job at a high school. In 2005, I had this idea. I was like, oh, I want to bring back the haunted house. My dad's like, oh, you don't want to do that? I was like, all right, I'm going to do it anyway. So I pushed back. In 2005, we also had a hurricane come through, Hurricane Wilma. So before the hurricane came through, the haunted house is finished. It came through Halloween weekend. We had to take down the entire haunted house. And I was like, well, it's not really my personality just to give up on something like that. My brother, my family, and all of my friends from high school football, we quickly assembled the haunted house back within a week, and then opened it that following weekend. We had a pretty good turnout, even though it wasn't Halloween anymore. So that was in 2005. And I remember building this haunted house, and I heard on the radio, it's like, oh, Bennigan's, Fort Myers, they have a Halloween costume contest. And it was like $1,500. Like $1,500 for a costume contest? I'm like, next year I'm going to make something and then, enter the contest. So the following year, for 30 days, I think is what it was, I was just strictly on my off hours, sculpting and fabricating this really crappy suit. And it was like latex fabrication. I mean, it was totally backwards. And I wound up putting it all together and then entering a contest that went in first place. And I was like, oh, cool, this is awesome. I just won $1,500. So the next year I did it again and won first place again. And then the next year I did it again. And I was like, oh, I want to kind of branch out to other areas in Florida and see if there's bigger venues that do contests. And sure enough, there was one in Tampa, there was one in Orlando. So I started entering all these other contests and winning. And I was like winning up to like $6,000 for just a weekend of fun. And then that turned into me creating such a large, vast portfolio that at the time I was just doing all this for fun. So in 2010, it was like 5 years after the haunted house idea that I came back with the family. 2010, I flew out to Los Angeles to visit some family, and while we were out there, I had my portfolio, and I was all high and mighty. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to all these studios and see if I can get a job here or an intern. So I woke up the next morning. I was like, no, maybe I want to go to a makeup school and learn more about the process of it versus what I was doing was kind of crappy at the time versus what they're doing in makeup effects and movie effects industry. So I kind of always wanted to achieve a high standard, a high quality of whatever you're trying to pursue, try to do it the best you can. So I wound up finding a makeup school that was just down the street from where we were staying, which is called Cinema Makeup School. Wound up touring the school, and I was just like fell in love with it. And I was like, man, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is awesome. And that was in 2010. And then I wound up talking to one of the administrators there. He's like, oh, you have to learn foam latex. I was like, what's foam latex? And I'm like, I've heard about it, but I've never really did research on what it actually was. And foam latex is a really soft material, what this is, and it moves and acts very similar to what skin is. And it's super lightweight and breathable, and that's what everybody uses for creature effects, because it's super lightweight. You can make big muscle suits and crazy creatures, animatronics, and it's really lightweight on servos too. We can get into that later with animatronics. So the administrator was telling me, he's like, you have to learn foam latex, it's the backbone of the industry. I was like, all right, but there was a lot that came with that, and adversities that came along with that to try to pursue and learn foam latex. So I went back home, went back to work, and I was in construction, and I was digging footers, and that next year came along. I don't know what happened there. The next year came along, and in April they had this new scholarship on the school's website, because I was wanting to pursue it, and it was going to take years. I mean, I would probably, if I didn't win the scholarship, I probably would have never moved to LA, because it never lined up for what I wanted to do at the time. So I was like, when I saw the scholarship, I was like, well, I'll apply for it, see what happens. I'll submit everything that I have, and go from there. And it was a worldwide application. So I was like, well, who knows what's going to happen, right? So I submitted everything, made a really nice portfolio, presented it to them, and then a few months later, I get a call that I won the scholarship. And I was just like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to move to LA. And at the time, it was pretty hard because, you're moving all the way across the country to pursue something that you're really, really passionate about, but you're also leaving behind. Sorry. You're also leaving behind a lot of loved ones. And if we were in Atlanta, it's not bad because on the weekends you just drive home and see your family. But LA is the happening spot for special effects. And I'm like, this is where I have to be. So we got rid of everything we had and shipped our cars out on my wife's anniversary, or our anniversary, and we shipped it out on November 11th, 2011. And then, sorry, I get an emotional thing about it, trying to reminisce on old memories. Because it just means so much to see things come to fruition, So we want to move into LA. And then I was and started the program at Cinema Makeup School. It was an 18-month kind of crash course. Cinema Makeup School is one of those schools that it's not like other makeup schools. They have industry working professionals that are your teachers. That was like a huge plus for me. I was like, that's what I want. That's what I need. And then it went from that to it's 18 months and I'm in the industry. It's not, Savini School, it's months and months of learning. And I was like, well, I already have a good, backbone in the industry for what I know, and I just need that makeup side. So I wound up going to the school, and then made a lot of good connections, a lot of good networking with all the other teachers that were there, the administrator. There's always, high-end makeup artists coming to the school, so you're getting to meet them. It's a networking thing. And you don't get that at really any other place other than Los Angeles. So I know this is where you have to be. This is the hub for special effects. So, what was it? I already had went through the character class, went through special effects, went through prosthetics, covering everything, loving every minute of it. And then we get into the beauty sections where you're doing straight makeup, you're doing beauty makeup, which is great. I mean, I aced it. I was getting better grades than some of the girls in the class. Because there was only one other guy that was with me. Everything else it's all female. So we're almost done with the course. I think I had 2 weeks left of school. And we take a tour at Rick Lazarini's The Character Shop. And Rick Lazzarini has been in the business for 35, 40 years. And he's one of the most brilliant masterminds of animatronics. So we take a tour of the studio. And afterwards, I'm like, somehow I have to talk to him, like after students leave or something, because I was like a chaperone, because I was one of just hopping along for the ride for it. And then winded up showing him one of my creature suits where I did these pull wings. There's just these big, massive wings, which we have here, but it's another level that my brother engineered and designed based off of my old set that he's like, yeah, but let's make these animatronic, let's go big. And I'm like, all right, you can do it. I'm not doing it because I want to focus on the skins of it. So we have that here today that we'll cover and show you guys. So I showed Rick the wings and the stuff I was doing. He was like, can you start Monday? And I was like, yep. So I went back to school and I was like, I talked to the administrator. I was like, hey, I'm gonna have to drop out because I just got hired at a studio. And that's the whole reason why I'm here, is because I'm looking for work. And I just got it. And he's like, well, I can't agree with you, but you can always come back and take the beauty and the hair class and finish it up. I was like, don't worry about it. So that kind of started the journey into the shop circuit, because there's several big effect shops in LA, massive. And Rick Lazarini's character shop was one of them. So I show up to work, and at the time I was living in Orange County. And Rick's shop was in Simi Valley, which is 140 miles round trip. So I was like, well, whatever it takes, I'll do it. So Rick had a unique working method where you show up at 7 a.m. and then you're off at 3, but you don't take any breaks. You take a 30-minute lunch, he pays for it, and then you're out. I'm like, love it. So while I'm doing that, and my first job was to build a tentacle mechanism. He's like, all right, well, we have this job and you're going to build a tentacle mechanism, about 3 foot, all slave controlled wires. I'm like, I never did that before, but I'll do it. It's kind of like one of those things, you fake it till you make it. You just go along with it. He had other models that I went off of, and I was checking those models out. And then, but the crazy thing is, we had to use all clear materials with it. So it was kind of hard going back to the lathe and creating a tentacle that was completely clear with a silicone skin over it. And also, it allowed me to sculpt it. I was absolutely floored by it. I was driving, I think, 3 hours in the afternoon just to get home, going just 70 miles one way, like 3 hours. And then that lasted 3 months. After the 3 months, then I was approached by Sci-Fi for a face-off. And at the time, I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to showboat. I don't want to go on there, and because the way the first couple seasons, because when I went up for season 4, the season 1 and season 2, and season 3, they were all kind of, well, actually I didn't watch season 3 because I was on when I was on the show. So the way it was like, I don't know, it's kind of like back and forth bickering, and I don't want to do that whole reality show thing. But then did my administrator, Lee Joyner, he was the one that was kind of like my shepherd through the whole schooling process and stuff. He's still one of my really dear friends today and mentor. And he told me, he goes, you have to do it, it'll get your name out there. And he's like, you'll enjoy it. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. So we had auditions at the school, and I wanted to do this really, really crappy alien makeup because I didn't want to do the show. But then I got a call back, and they're like, oh, we love your makeup. I'm like, you guys are nuts. So I go back for a second auditions, and then they called me like 3 days before I had to do this next audition. They're like, yeah, we need you to sculpt an appliance. It has to be original, and you need to sculpt it, mold it, and then apply it in 3 days. I was like, all right, whatever. So wound up doing it, and I casted the appliance out of gelatin. Same thing that gummy bears are made out of. It's one of the materials that we use. It's been used in our early movie days, but it's really unstable under heat, so it melts and gets sticky. Well, while I was doing the audition and filling out all these paperwork, I left it in the car. And in California, it gets kind of hot. So when I got back out to the car, I remember I was doing the paperwork, and I just threw it down and like ran to the car, and then started checking it. And I was like, oh, it's okay, because I had like a little towel over it. And then I went back in and did the makeup. And then afterwards, they interviewed. They're like, oh, tell us about your makeup. I'm like, all right. So I told them this story. It's like, oh, I left it in the car, and it was melting, and they loved it. Ah, that's so funny. It'd be perfect for TV. So that's what they wanted. They wanted like a drama scenario kind of thing. But I was like, whatever, I'll go with the ride. I'll do it. So, and then that's what started the whole face-off thing. And then, I mean, it was pretty tough leaving, because it was. I went all the way to the end. I was one of the finalists. We had this big water show at the La Rev and the Wynn in Vegas, which is pretty cool. And they're diving 40 feet, like face first. So all the makeup had to be waterproof, and it was absolutely amazing to watch, but it's so stressful to do it. And I mean, you're sequestered for 11 weeks, so there's no TV, there's no cell phones, there's nothing but you and your competitor. And we all actually became really, really good friends, and I'm still really good friends with at least half of them. And face off was good. When it comes to the effect shops looking at face offers, that's what we get called is, oh, that's a face offer. And they have somewhat of a bad name just because of the way they present themselves to the studios. Like, oh, I was on Face Off, and it's like, well, you're in, this immaculate studio, and we've been in business for 40 plus years. There's the door. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a way you hold yourself, and where a lot of contestants don't. I mean, a lot of them do work, but some of them they have bad attitudes, and they just don't get it, I guess. So when I got off the show, I talked to a few people that were in the industry, and that's what they were telling me. They're like, oh yeah, these face-off guys, they don't know what they're doing. They had no idea I was on the show. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, you're right. And it was like weeks went by, and then one guy knew I was on the show, and he goes, and someone was talking about Face-Off. I'm like, man, this Face-Off guy, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh yeah, Wayne was on Face-Off. And the guy's like, what? And it was the owner of the shop, and he's like, if I would have done that, I would have fired you. And I was like, wow. It really was an eye-opener on how you're supposed to respect the industry, and how people that are in the industry look and view at the show, because the show is very, very fast-paced. You're turning stuff around within a matter of days and hours for some of it, and it's very strenuous. And some of the stuff that some contestants produce on the show is actually pretty good. You're like, they did that in 3 days, or actually, 20 hours, total working hours. It's kind of nuts, because in shops you get months of work, you get weeks of work, just to do the smallest thing. So when the shops see that, the amount of work that somebody on the show is doing, it's opening an eye to someone that has only been in the industry or just straight out of school like I was, and dumping you right into the hands of producers that are going to give you work right off the bat when you don't have the experience. So that's where all the shop guys were getting really mad about it. And I always stayed super low key about it, never talked about it. And I've always remained that way, even to today. I mean, I'll talk about the show and about the good and the bad times on it and stuff like that, but other than that, I mean, I pretty much keep it under lock and key. I mean, I got a lot of fans from it. It was great. Met a lot of cool people at conventions, and inspired people like, oh, love your work and stuff like that. So that was a cool aspect of it, is inspiring people. So once I started at Rick Lazarini and I call it shop hopping. And shop hopping is like when you're in a studio and then you're there for a certain amount of time, and then kind of like your contract's up, and then the next studio will either call you up or you don't get a call. But luckily, for some reason, I've always been able to get a call from somebody, because it's a networking thing. You make good friends with other sculptors, mold makers, or painters. Other shop owners really like you, and then next thing you know, It's like, oh yeah, we need a painter. It's like, I don't know who to call. They're like, oh, there's this guy Lane or whatever. And then next thing you know, you get a call. And then that job turns into meeting a dozen more people. And then the next job, you meet a dozen more people. So next thing you know hundreds of people, and they all have your number. And then it's just word of mouth. Because I've never sent my resume to a studio. And I've remained busy the entire time, which, thank God for that. Because I see a lot of artists really struggle with it and try to stay busy. And then I get calls where it's like, hey, do you have any work? It's like, no, I don't have any work. I mean, I can try to get you into a shop. And then it goes from that to where I'm trying to help out or, give jobs away. I'll get calls for jobs and then I'm like, I can't do it, but I know my buddy can do it. So he gets a job and next thing you know, he's working on, a Marvel movie for 6 months. I'm like, dang it, I turned it away. So it's a lot of that. And then he doesn't even tell me for like a year later. He's like, oh yeah, I was on The Revenant. Remember that? Yeah, I did the horse. I'm like, what? I'm like, that's a job you got and you never told me? I was like, thanks for the pat on the back, But yeah, so it's really cool though. I mean, a lot of the guys in the industry are really nice guys. They just don't want to see it like fall apart with new blood and people just, charging really, really cheap wages. And then it brings the production of everything way down because they're getting stuff for nothing when they should, be paying for it. Because the studios have money, producers have money, and they should be paying it. So that's why a lot of studios don't like Face Off. So after that, I'm trying to see where I'm going with it. Let's see. So I was getting a lot of sculpting jobs. Like I started off to where, like early on the first few years in LA, I was doing a lot of makeup and a lot of sculpting and kind of doing both, going back and forth. Okay, is the mic going back and out back there? Yeah, all right, sorry. So the first few years in LA, I was doing a lot of makeup and a lot of sculpting and kind of doing the whole process at certain shops. And it's like the lower end shops versus like the big like industry shop where it's just like, they're turning out like huge jobs. So this is like lower key stuff, kind of like B-movies type stuff. And it was a lot of fun because you kind of learn your way around where it's like, I'm going to sculpt the appliance and then I'm going to break down the sculpture to create an appliance that's multi-piece. So that way you can glue it down a lot easier. And then go to set with it, and then you're applying it. So it was doing the whole process from start to finish, which is really, really nice because a lot of artists don't get that chance. They're either a sculptor department, or you're in the painting department, or you're in the mold making department, which you get in there, you kind of never get out of the mold department, from what I've seen. So it's one of those things to where that helped me out early on, where I was able to take something from start to finish, and then I was lucky enough that the owners, trusted me enough to where I could go to set like a run a show or something like that, and that was really nice. And then it got to the point to where I started sculpting for RBFX. I post a lot of the stuff that I sculpt for them, and it's a generic appliance company, to where it's just like, oh, I need a double face or I need a witch face, and he does all these generic appliances where it'll fit, and you can mix and match for all of them. So I started sculpting for RBFX, and he's primarily a foam runner. And foam runner is someone that's titled that, is that all they do is run foam latex. They get a mold, and then all they do is just keep running foam all day and all night. That's all they do. And then they cook it, because foam latex, you have to mix it, kind of like a baker, and then you have to put it in the mold, and then it has to cook for about 6 or 7 hours, and then you pull it. And then when you pull it out of the mold, it's just how you sculpted it. So I noticed a different turn in my career when I started sculpting for RBFX, where that's all I was doing. I was just posting tons of photos. And I think I'm up to like 40 different sculptures for RBFX. And then a lot of other guys in the industry started noticing them and commenting, and that's just the day and age now. Social media is such an outlet to do that. So your other guys that are now commenting on my work, I'm like, oh wow, that's so-and-so from that studio. He owns that studio and he likes my work. So it was something like that started happening to where they were seeing this huge genre of characters that I was able to sculpt and post them, and it was getting a lot of, from my perspective, it was getting a lot of attention. And then that turned into going to work for Studio ADI. ADI is Amalgamated Dynamics Incorporated, and they're in Los Angeles also, and they're responsible for like AVP, Um, they did a few of the Predator movies. They recently did It, Bright, the new Predator, and then Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, which is the second Jurassic World. So I wound up working for them, and this is early on still. And one of the owners, Tom Woodruff, he had a movie called Fire City that he was directing. It was his directorial debut, and he was wanting me to be one of the lead makeup artists for it. And I thought that was amazing because Tom goes back and he wore alien suits and all that stuff. So I was really, really, stoked to be in that kind of presence in that kind of studio and the kind of quality that they put out. And I'm like, that's where I want to be. So I started working there. Same thing, sculpt the makeup, go to set, run it for like 18 days on set, doing the same makeup, and I have photos that I'll pull up and show you. But I wound up doing that, and then that snowballed to where I was getting horrible pay at the time, but that turned into, I think 3 years went by before I went back to ADI because I was busy with other shops, going shop to shop. Shop call you, and you're like, oh, I'm at this shop. I'm like, all right, bye. And then 3 years go by, and I go back there, and then it just snowballs. We work on It, and then Predator turns up, and then Bright, and then Jurassic World. So it's just like huge movies, one right after another, sculpting amazing stuff. And then pretty much leads me to where I am today. I mean, that's where I've been working for a while. I was there for almost a year at ADI working on the different movies, and I'm mainly only sculpting now. I rarely do makeup on set. The only time I do makeup is if I'm doing it for my personal use, because when you go to work and you get that repetitive like 9 to 5 job, it turns into another job. So as an artist, you have to still have that outlet to express yourself personally with your own art. And that's where I'll go home, get off at 5 with traffic. It's like 8 o'clock, and then you go back to your man cave and start sculpting on your own stuff like this. So it's like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting there sculpting or molding it or casting it up or making a mold, with fiberglass, and then I'm strolling in the house at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Get up at 5, go back to work. That's a pretty normal week. And I mean, I do that all the time. And there's days where you'll just stay up for days upon days because if you get your own personal gig, all the responsibility is on you now. You don't have the studio handling all the work of it. So you got producers calling you, emailing you like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you got to get back with them. And recently had that on this last job I just did for a film which I can't talk about. But it was cool because the guy that I worked with was Spawn from, it was like 97, Michael J. White. Wound up doing full body light cast on and everything. So that was really cool to do that. That was just this past year, and made a ton of realistic appliances. Not creature stuff, but it was all realistic stuff, which is, you can do it, but it's not as fun. You have to make it look real, which is like 10 times the cost of creature stuff because it takes so much time. The materials are a lot more money because it's silicone. You got to hire people to punch hair, and it's a lot of work. But it's also a lot of fun because when it's finished, you're like, that looks just like him. And so when the movie comes out, I think it's called Dragged Across Concrete. It's an odd name, but it's the same director that did Bone Tomahawk, and then I think he did I think it's Cell Block 99. I can't think of the other ones, but he's a really, really good director, and he's directing this next movie coming out. LA times, what is that? 5?
It's almost 6.
Oh, 10 to 6.
Okay, it's almost 6.
All right. Perfect. See, that's what I have to deal with. That's why nothing's done. All right. I guess I'll talk about the haunted house because that pretty much brings me up to the last big movie that I worked on was I think it was Bright, which is on Netflix. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it turned out to be a pretty smash hit, just like Stranger Things. before I get into talking about the haunted house, I'll pull up these photos. Turkey. I'll kind of talk. This is from.
Yeah, no big.
Yeah, I'll say it.
Okay.
So some of this stuff, if you have your cell phone or whatever, just don't record audio or video. I don't want to lose my job. It's one of those things, which is funny because a lot of the stuff that we do in the studio, sometimes we get NDAs to sign, and they're like signing your life away, and you're like, I really don't want to sign this or work here. So, but for some reason, I haven't signed an NDA in the longest time. I think Stranger Things I did, but it's already out, and it's on season 2 now, which I didn't work on season 2. Season 2, it was basically all CG, which is really odd because that was the whole nostalgia of the first one. It was all practical, and it was like this big thing. Oh, we're going back to 80, woo, and then it's CG. So anyway, so I have some photos from Stranger Things, and I'll show you what I worked on. All right, so these were the feet. Look how small it is. Enhance. I guess that's good enough. You guys can see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what you're looking at here is the gray material is the clay, and then you can obviously see his foot. So they did this in a way so that way it's comfortable for the suit performer, because we all like to see stilts where you're kicked back, kind of like a dog's leg or something that's more creature based. And when you see that, you're like, oh, that's awesome, it's a creature. But in the world of movies, you're like, we'll just green screen that out, so it's no problem. So they want to make it as comfortable as possible for the actor. So you can see his foot there. He's obviously going to have a kicker foot plate that comes down, and then there's simple animatronics that will come out to the toes, because in the shop, he actually had to where when he put his heel down, the toe would tap, kind of like in, the Velociraptor in Jurassic Park. And it was like, whoa, that's pretty awesome. So that's really cool to see. Like after you sculpt it, they mold it, and then all of these pieces come together from this huge, vast team that you're working with, just to create one thing. So it's like it's such a rewarding thing to be able to witness. Let's see, and then this is the bottom of the foot. Try to enhance it. But you can see it's like I'm sculpting all this detail. I'm like, yeah, look at all this detail. And then they come over and they go, that's the bottom of the foot. They're not going to see the detail. So I'm like, okay, so I just put my initials in the bottom of the foot. I think it says like WA or something like that. I'm like, I'll do whatever I want now. You won't see it. So let's close this file. And then I have photos of him, which is Mark. I'm trying to think his last name. Just sculpted on his head. That's Mark Seeger. This is Mark Seeger. He's a little older fellow, but he's one of the best. And what you're looking at here is him in a foam latex suit that hasn't been trimmed or painted or anything, and there's the stilts. So the feet will get CG'd out. The feet get CG'd out, and you'll never see it like you see it in the show. This is really cool because I've never. I mean, they've probably done this effect 1,000 times, but I've never seen it like in person, and it was pretty amazing. This part, where you see this shoulder coming off here, that shoulder was then attached to this outer arm, and then he would be on set. He'd be wearing a green screen suit, which is chroma key green, so that just like his shoes. So that way on set, camera's not going to pick that up. They can CG his arms out. So then that way you get this really dynamic creature with these long, spindly arms, just like you see in the show. And which is also amazing is in that mechanic design. I think it was. There's a lot of people in the animatronics department over there, but I know the lead animatronic guy over there is Mark Straction, and he's like a mad scientist of animatronics. He's like next level. But he designed, or one of the guys designed that in that shop. And you can see there's a little grip. There's a little grip that Mark is holding there. And that, when he twists it, moves the fingers. So there's all this really high, engineering that goes on to this creature. And then you can see how thin the fingers are. So there's all this engineering that has to go into designing the sculpture, the mold, what kind of core is it going to be on. There's so many different elements that go into this just to create the final look, and then it gets CG'd over to a point. And this is Brian Wade. I think I mentioned Brian. Maybe that was earlier that I was thinking, but sorry. I'll zoom up on this real quick. So I think this is when it was painted. Yeah. So there was two different versions of the head. There's two different versions of the head for the Demogorgon, and I think this one was just the stand-in. It wasn't the animatronic head. So this head doesn't move at all. All these little flippers that come off here, that's just so he can see out of it, and that just, you do like walk around shots. And there's another head that opens up and shutters. There's a video on YouTube. You type in spectral motion, animatronics for the Demogorgon for Stranger Things, it'll pull right up. It's amazing. That's what Mark Direction wound up making. So you can see here, all the way down, you can see where the feet are painted, and you can see his boots coming out there. And it's pretty stable. I mean, it's pretty easy to walk around when you don't have to be at that weird, like 30-degree angle on your feet. But that's Brian Wade. He's one of the best sculptors in the business, and I was fortunate enough to work with him. He's super, super nice guy. Probably one of the nicest guys in the business. So, let's see. So that's all I have for Stranger Things photos. And we'll have like a Q&R thing to where if you guys have questions about anything that I'm not covering, I'll be glad to ask or answer them. I'll just flip through some of these photos here because time's getting kind of tight for the suit demo. So these were the teeth I sculpted for it, his little buck teeth. And what was crazy about this is that the first design of these were like these mangled, kind of like tooth staggered here and there. And then it got toned down just to little buck teeth like that. There they are. Sorry about that. So this was like the first design that I came up with for them. And it was something, I sculpted these in like a few hours just because it's a fast-paced kind of industry. It's like, we need teeth. All right, what's the design? They want buck teeth, and just make something up. All right, so I just made something up like this, and they're like, it might be too much, which after these got denied and then just went to the buck teeth, then they went with these giant teeth that come and bite Georgie's arm off. And then I sculpted those, and it was like this, like Thresher's sand shark teeth. And it was like hundreds of these little teeth, and it drove me nuts trying to do it. Because you get one perfect, and then you nick another tooth, and you're like, I gotta fix that one. So you have to go back and forth. So those took a little while to do, but I didn't paint the teeth. I didn't paint the teeth on those or mold them, just sculpture only. So that's what I'm saying, is that there's a huge crew in an FX studio that it goes from start to finish. Let's talk about Bright Works. I didn't download that one. All right, well, this was the first day on Bright. This was the photo they gave me of Joel Edgerton, and they're like, make him look like this, but an orc. I'm like, okay. So the only thing you can really do is kind of put his same expression into the sculptures. That way, when you hand it off, or the producer see it, or the director sees it, they're like, I can see a little bit of Joel in there, but it's way too much. And I'm like, all right. And that's something that we're not really. I'm never talking to producers. that's the, the higher ups, that's their job, and then we just get relayed the message of what they say. But this was kind of like my concept of what, Joel's character should look like. And then later on, they brought in Steve Koch. He's another really great designer, makeup designer, and sculptor. So they brought him in, and there's a few people that design stuff, but it always gets dulled down to something that works the best for not only for the movie, the character, but for the actor himself. Because originally, when they casted up, the sculpture was finished, and they casted up the material in silicone. Well, when they put the makeup on Joel came in. It was pretty cool. He's not really a tall guy. I thought he was huge, but he's not. But he came in, and they got the makeup done to him, and then afterwards they're like, we're gonna have to resculpt the whole thing because the silicone, he says, it feels too heavy on his face, and he can't emote through the makeup. He said he can't feel his face expressing through it. So, I mean, that's like tens upon tens of thousands of dollars to redo just that, so we can change to a different material. Luckily, I think on that or the mold shop, they wind up doing a clay pour. It's where you heat up the clay in a crock pot, and then you pour it into the mold, and then you freeze it, and then you pull it out. So that way you're somewhat still saving the sculpture. So it's just a clay pour. And then they had to adjust it, redo all the molds because now it's totally different. And the original molds, I think, were just tossed aside. And then it became foam latex. Because foam latex is super, super lightweight. Super lightweight. Versus, like if this was silicone, this would weigh probably almost a pound. If this was silicone. And foam latex is as light as air. It's basically mattress foam that has just been altered a little bit so that way it stays firmer. So his makeup and all the other orcs, it all just turned into foam latex because originally it was all going to be silicone because with HD and 4K, everyone's like, oh, it's going to be so crystal clear. We need it to be as realistic as possible. So that's where silicone comes in handy so much because it's translucent. It's just like your skin. Even though you can't see through your skin, but when light comes behind it, that's the effect that a lot of movies are trying to achieve. Is that lighting effects that you get with silicone that you don't get with foam latex, because foam latex is very opaque. You'll never see through it unless it's paper thin. And a lot of the times everything's super, super thick for foam latex. I thought I had I was going to show you the difference from this early on sculpture I did and then how much it got dulled down. But this was one of the orcs that I was doing for Bright. And this was a makeup on the guy that shoots Will Smith in the beginning. And that gets dulled down to like super smooth. And because we had, the studio had the notion to where it's like, okay, well we have like 15 different orcs, but we want them to mix and match the appliances with other appliances that someone else is sculpting, so that way we get this diversity in orcs versus having like all these appliances to just go for this orc, or you know what I mean? So when they did the appliances, I think I have a photo, yeah, here it is. So anyway, this picture here is the same photo. This is the same neck and everything. This is when it was finished and the face was cut off. So this is what it looks like now. And this is for application purposes. It's not a mask. It's not a mask anymore. It's actually a makeup because now you have blending edges that blend off to the actor's face. So this was all foam, but this is still in the clay form, but then once it's molded and off to the foam department, it'll be all foam latex. So that all gets glued down. It gets glued down all to their head. So then normally they'll put down a ball cap, like a latex ball cap or a vinyl cap, and they'll glue everything down. So that way when they turn their head, everything that's sculpted in there sculpturally, like the neck muscles and everything, it all moves with the actor. It doesn't look like there's weird buckling or something like that, because when you see it on a 60-foot screen, you're going to see every little thing, and it takes you out of the moment. Then it feels fake, like CG. So that was the face, and then this is like a nose. So you can see here that on these cheeks here, this is kind of like the final stage. This would be the final stage of the makeup, and this is kind of like the key of the puzzle, right? So you have the cowl, that's what we call the cowl, is just the back of the head. And then we have the face, the brow was one piece, the cheeks were one piece, and then the chin was one piece, and the nose one piece. So it's like a six-piece makeup, which means that you have 12 molds just for those appliances. So if you think about 15 different characters plus all these different background masks, I mean, your molds are going to stack up and just be enormous amount of storage. And it was a lot of stuff. And this was one of the background masks for, I think this was sculpted in a day. I think I did this one in a day because they were like, oh, we need it like tomorrow. I'm like, all right, you mean yesterday? And then, let's see if I have any more. Oh, these are some bright teeth. These are some of the ore teeth that we're going through. They wanted these large tusks. And we're like, I don't know how they're going to talk to these things, which most of them, they don't really talk anyway. But the ones that did talk, they had to be altered a lot for the actors, so that way they can talk and be comfortable.
Yeah.
This is when they're closed. So you can see there's a little bit of a gap here. Anytime that you're sculpting teeth, and they're really big monster teeth like this, your actor's going to drool and have saliva constantly dripping out of his mouth because he can't close. It's just like at the dentist. And that's what happens with a lot of these real big teeth like this. Pretty much covers what I have here for photos. Oh, these were for Underworld. These teeth were for Underworld. This is a pretty cool suit. This is Beyond Skyline. I think it just came out. But this was back in like 2015, and it just came out. I just like totally forgot about this film. But these were these weird little shoulder pieces. But this is just an example of like blocking out, and it's blocking out in clay, and then detailing it. So it goes from like what it was before to something that's highly detailed like this. And then those shoulder pieces went over this suit. So you can see the design in the back. And this sculpture was headed up by Akihito Akita, which Aki is one of my close friends. He's from Japan. He's been in the business for a long time. And this was another thing to where I worked with Aki one time. And we became good friends, and then I get a call months later to come work with him on this suit. So this is one of the things to where that's where the whole networking thing kind of plays back. It's like, oh, we were sculpting these big biceps for a Skittles commercial for the Super Bowl, and next thing you know, we're working together on this really highly detailed creature suit. And then I mainly worked on the legs down to the stilts. For some reason, I keep sculpting feet. I don't know what it is. I guess you start from the bottom and work your way up. But I enjoy it because the feet are usually always get seen, right? Feet and hands. You always see it in the movie. Something stepping in the mud. You see the feet. It's like, I sculpted it, you didn't CG it. And then you see the hands. The hands are such a big part of it. So it's like, I don't mind sculpting feet and hands. Not at all, because it gets to be seen. And this was the back part of the suit. You can just see how intricate the details are. I'll work that up. And that was Beyond Skyline. This is another one. This was for like a TV pilot that never saw the light of day, but it was still really cool. This is another block out. So you can see the design, designed by William Basso. He's a great designer. So this is my block out, and then it goes from block out to detailed shot. So this is all polished up, ready for the breakdown of the makeup. So we sculpt the entire piece and almost finish it. Well, I usually always finish it like all the way 100%. A lot of guys will take it to a certain point, and then they start cutting it up into the actual prosthetics that get molded into separate pieces. And I'll show you what that looks like. So once that sculpture was finished, gets approved, photos are taken, Then we're like, okay, we can start the next process. And this is one of the jobs that you take from like start to finish. But I don't think I didn't go to set on this one because I had left the shop to go to another shop. But this is it cut up into pieces. So you can see we cut off those tentacles. The tentacles were cut off, and then now you have a nose appliance, a brow appliance, the lower lip appliance, and then it would be the cowl appliance, just like the orc appliance from earlier. So that's what you see there. And then that gets capped and molded after that, and then it's ran in foam latex. Oh, here's the skills. So this was the arm for skills. And this was one of my first really big jobs that I ever got and worked at, because this was sculpted at Legacy FX, and Legacy FX mainly handles anything like Marvel. So like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Iron Man, all that stuff. Their Legacy pretty much gets it. But nowadays it seems like they do a lot of 3D printing at Legacy, which is fine. Some of the stuff needs to be 3D printed. But this was the arm for it, and then here it is on set. This is actually a pretty fun commercial. So that's on set, and the idea of the skills commercial was all the guys and everybody in this village had big muscular right arms, and then this lady came in with a big left muscular arm, and she beat everybody in the town. Then she won all the money or something, or all the skills, whatever it was. Here's a big one giant arm, and I didn't do these makeups. These were sent to me by fellow makeup artists that were on set, because they kind of keep in contact with sculptors that really like to get feedback. It's like, hey, what did that look like on set? Because we're painting all this stuff in the shop, and then we just ship it off to them onto set. So they get it on set. Sometimes you're like, what is this paint job? And they have to fix it, or it's really, really good stuff. So it all depends on the turnaround time too. It's like sometimes you just gotta ship it out no matter what. So that way you don't hold up production. This is some RVFX, like alien brow. This is just generic stuff. It's almost, to me working for him is like doing personal work. It's like a Yoda concept that he wanted. It's not really Yoda, can't call it Yoda, but it's pretty close to Yoda. It's just like a zombie brow. This is like some ogre troll face. This is some more personal work that you see on the banner, but he's just a different color with UV paints. So it's activated by black lights. Then I just do the wardrobe and the leather work and the base. This was a Frankenstein sculpture, or Frankenstein's monster, I should say. It's really blurry. Let me try to see what else I can show you here. Oh, this was a demo when I was hired by a guy in China to do personal lessons. So he flew me out to China, and I was there for 8 weeks, teaching him how to sculpt and how to make molds and how to run materials and stuff, because it's very limited in China. So he wanted to fly me out there, and this was just a quick demos that I did for him. Did like a zombie chest, did some bat ears, just regular ears, and I did like a half predator, half armor sculpture. And all these were done in like a half a day. It was just real quick. I mean, in the photos it looks okay, but like up close you're like, oh, that needs another week of work because it's really, really rough sculpting. Here's more of a realistic type sculpture. I don't know how close I can get to see the detail. But you can kind of see, I mean, it's all, and I actually referenced Stallone on this one. I was like, Arnold's too big to put on this core, so I gotta go with Stallone because he's little. But you can see the level of detail that you can get, and this is an oil-based clay. There's a few different types of clay, but oil-based is the one that never dries out. You can always come back to it, and it's very sticky. It's kind of like bubble gum. I I kind of hate it at times, but when you finish it, it has a really, really nice finishing detail level to it versus a water-based clay like wet clay. Let's see. Oh, this was back on the bright stuff. This was Joel Edgerton's head. Was sculpted by Steve Koch, and then Steve was really tied up with a lot of stuff, and they're like, you detail it and finish it out for me. And I was like, okay, so you can kind of see the pore texture and the little bumps. And that's the kind of level that we put into a lot of the work. You know, it's all the way down to the finest, even though you don't see it, right? You don't see it, you just see color and the cool makeup, but like the sculpture, that's like the foundation of the entire character. And if something's off, the whole thing's gonna be off. So that's something that we take a lot of pride in the sculpture, to really, emphasize all the texture that we can as much as possible, based off of the design of the character. So you can see the, so you can see the level of like detail. It was funny because I sculpted it, and then when they did the test makeup, the supervisor told me, he's like, the director said he likes this spot right here, and everything, that's the texture for all the orcs. I was like, all right. I guess I kind of designed the texture for the orcs. You just make it up. I mean, growing up at a young age, you're around a lot of animals and fish and reptiles and all that stuff. You kind of, all that stays with you. So when I'm sculpting, I'm referencing back to nature. That's the ultimate resource we have as an artist, is nature. And this is a chest. I just finished this before I got here. This is just a zombie chest. This is another generic appliance. So that's a full chest, and that gets completely glued down to your skin. So that way when you move and contort, it all moves along with you. That's about it for photos. And these teeth I just sculpted a few days ago, and then casted them up yesterday. And I sculpted these for the makeup because I always felt like this makeup needed larger teeth because he's such a large character. And then I sculpted, I think, 2 sets for him. And then every time I do it, it's like, they need to be bigger. It's like, whatever. So this time I really wanted to punch it up, and I went massive with the teeth. And my brother tried them on earlier, and they look pretty nice. So I was like, I think that's it. Finally hit the mark on the teeth. So, but yeah, that concludes for what I have to talk about with the photos. If you want to do any questions. Yeah, we can do like 10 minutes of questions. Okay, then we'll start. Yeah. All right, Brad. Questions? Any questions about anything?
Just start out with, well, just shout it out and then we can answer it. Okay. That's not supposed to be a passing about.
Oh, sorry.
But easy for your response, just shout.
Yeah, okay.
So my question is for somebody who's just starting off in special effects makeup, what is a good clay to start with to start sculpting?
That's a good question. I think water-based clay is probably the best. It's the cheapest. You can get a 25-pound block for like $6. That's what I started out with, was wet clay. And a lot of sculptors, they're like, I don't like wet clay. It's messy. It's water dripping all over the place, and then pieces fall on the ground, and that turns into powder, which is not really safe to breathe. It turns into crystalline silica, which is cancerous. But you should start with that one. But yeah, it's in the clay that you want to use. It's not like a pottery clay. It's wet clay, and it's actually designed by Disney. That's why they call it wet clay. It's Walter Ellis Disney. That's who created it. It has a really high glycerin content in it, so the water or the clay stays very lubricated. It stays really wet for a long period of time. Like pottery clay dries out super fast because that's how it's designed. And you can get that through Laguna Clay Company. So, and then other clays like Monster Clay is another good clay. It has a lot of wax in it. It's really hard. That I like because it's not really sticky like the Chavant NSP.
No
That's another good question. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to explain it. It's like special effects it's definitely one of those like hands-on things. It's like you don't get it until you do it. Exactly like with a teacher in like a class, because there's a lot of the process where it's called snap molds, to where we're breaking down the makeup from a full sculpture, like I showed these other photos, and where you see it in the full sculpt, and then it's broken down into multiple appliances. You know, that way is very invasive and it costs a lot of money, but if you're just starting out, a good mold material is Ultra Cal 30. You can run foam latex in it, you can run silicone in it. I think the only place that you can get Ultra Cal 30 around here is a gypsum cement. It would either be like a building yard that casts statues, or you can drive 3 hours north, like I did, to Reynolds Advanced Materials and buy a bag from there. But I started out the same way. I would sculpt it, and I was brushing latex over it because I had no clue. I had no clue how to make a mold. It was like mad science at the time when you think about it. But once you learn it, it's super easy to do. You know, so.
Back in the day when you said you went to the school over in LA, I don't remember hearing what the name of it was.
The school name is Cinema Makeup School, and that's in downtown Los Angeles.
Can you tell me the difference if you know, I don't even know if you know the school, the Nomon School? Nomon, G-O-E-N-O-M-O-N?
Yeah, the Nomon School, that one is mainly digital.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all digital effects. And they have, I mean, which is kind of nice, is like all the studios offer free classes for other artists. So if you're working at a studio, the Nomon School of Arts, you can take courses for free, but they're super strict. And if you miss one day, they kick you out for like the whole months that you sign up for the class. But they have really, really good teachers there.
Yeah, I was just wondering the difference between, so you pretty much understand.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, Cinema Making School mainly will cover digital as well, but not as much as what Nomon School does. And cinema is all hands-on, practical effects. Way back.
Did you ever feel pressure when you were one of the only guys in the big public sculpture industry?
When I was going to school, I was the only guy, other than my other buddy from Josh McCarron from Texas, and he was just at the military, and he was there first, and I walked in, he's like, I'm so glad you're here, man. I was like, all right, we'll be bros the whole time, for 18 weeks, and but I never really felt the pressure. I thought it was always odd that all these girls wanted to learn how to make special effects, and I never see any guys. And I think it might be a pride thing or something. I don't get it. Because most guys are like, I don't need to go to school, I can do this on my own. Like my first thoughts, I'm gonna go to the shops, I'm gonna do this, but I wanted to learn. I just didn't want to go out and get hired and not know enough, because I think that benefited me, because no one really knew who I was until I built up my talents to a certain level, to where I would go into these shops and I'm like, oh, you're good. And then you get what you should be getting paid, versus walking straight into a shop. And then they always know you as an intern, so they'll always look at you that way, or as like a mold maker. They're always going to view you that way. So if you start out like painting or sculpting, that's how you're viewed across pretty much the entire industry. But I never really felt pressured. When I was in school, I just thought it was odd that there were so many girls and really no guys in there.
What material do you make the teeth with?
The teeth material is exactly what the dentists use. So it's all dental acrylic polymer and monomer powders, Flexacryl, which you guys will probably be able to see close up when you guys take photos outside when the makeup's done, but it's all exactly the same stuff. So in a way, you're kind of like a dentist when you're making these teeth. We have dental articulators, and I take a life cast in my brother's mouth and his teeth, and then we put them on the articulator, and then we start sculpting. You're constantly opening and closing the articulator to make sure that everything lines back up. Because if you just sculpt it and then he puts it in, it could all be twisted and not fit properly, especially if they're large like these. You want to make sure that it's very precise. But yeah, it's all the same materials that a dentist would use. It's all medical grade stuff, so it's safe.
You said that you draw a lot of inspiration from nature. Looking back on some of your work, like
I don't know, I really don't like alligators or anything like that. But yeah, probably reptiles and fish. That's my main thing. I was 9 years old. I had an iguana for several years before it committed suicide or something. I don't know. It ate newspaper and like choked itself to death. So I was like 16 years old. I'm like, no, my lizard. But yeah, I draw information. I draw a lot of reference from reptiles and fish, but also from leaves, vegetables. I mean, all kinds of stuff because it's all the different textures. Anything that has texture, I'm looking at it and be like, oh, I could put that into this certain element. I was back when I was making the original wings. I had this is like prototype wing webbing that we have that weighs the same as another wing webbing that's completely translucent that we're prototyping. But when I first made these wings, I was in Wendy's in Fort Myers and I was looking up at the ceiling at Halloween, and they had this spider web stretched across the ceiling, and it was all this really, like this one little spot was very organic. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So I went and bought a bunch of super stretch spider web, and then stretched it out, sprayed adhesive on it, and then rolled it up into where it looked like veins, and then created latex sheets, and then that was my veining in it. So it's something that I think as an artist and as a sculptor, you're always drawing elements from whatever, like this gray carpet. I mean, sculpt something from it or be inspired by it. But yeah, that's what I draw inspiration from.
So when you're going over your studio, would that be long term or offering?
Yeah, so her question was, when I get hired from the studio, is it long term or is it shop hopping? Like I said, it's completely shop hopping. Like there's no union, so it's you get a job. It could be a week to sculpt something quick. If it's like I said, teeth or something, you try to like go as slow as possible, but your day's coming. And luckily, sometimes when you get hired as a week, and then next thing you know, it goes into 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then you're there for a whole year because you didn't expect it. Because new jobs come in, so it's really a hit or miss. But you always kind of want to have something on the back burner from talking to your other sculptor buddies, like, oh yeah, I'm over at so-and-so, and we got some work here. I'm like, well, keep me in mind because I'm about to get fired or something. So that's where we go with it, yeah.
It sounds like there's a bit of a war going between the actual fabricators and the CG people. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess there's a little bit of rivalry with that. I remember it was like probably 4 years ago, all the digital guys on Facebook made a green icon for their profile picture, and then everyone that was practical made it brown. So it was like this feud. So I was like taking photos of like bags of wet clay and posting it as my profile picture. So that was like, yeah, we stand united, wet clay. But yeah, there's a little bit of that going on, just because back in the day, that's what everyone's used to is this practical effects. And then as technology changes, it's like, oh, here's HD and then 4K, and then oh, practical effects doesn't really look good anymore. It looks fake, and you can tell someone's wearing a rubber suit. And then the CG guys come in and they CG over everything, and then that makes all the practical effects guys mad because it's like we just spent months and years working on something, and then they come in and work on it. Oh yeah, I'll pull that up there. But yeah, so there is a little bit of a feud, but again, you try to stay friendly with everybody, and it's like it's just their job, and it's not them personally, but it's like the director or producers that want something. I think it's kind of like a great thing to have, an extra tool. It's like practical effects is a tool, and VFX is a tool, and harmoniously they work great together. But if it's too much of one thing, it's like that's too much CG, or if it's too much practical, you can tell that it's just not right. You watch some movies today, and everyone knows that it's fake. It's way too much CG, it's over the top, and it could be because the technology changed with how high definition. It's so crystal clear that it just looks fake. There's something about those, the nostalgia of having that 80s film that's really, really gritty. There's something real about it, and it just, it's something that we grew up on, I guess, too, that it's not going to be the same. It'll never be the same how it was before. So.
There's another question in the back?
Well, I guess it was sort of at the same line, but my question was, since you're really working in the field and you see what all the studios are doing, and even with all the advances in technology, you see that this, beautiful art form still is thriving and is a driving force, and like you said, working harmoniously with the digital side, so that way this level of craftsmanship and artistry will always have a place in that music business.
Yeah, I think practical effects will never go away. I don't think CG will never replace it. Just like how a lot of sculptors are like, oh, we're getting replaced by 3D printers. The T1000 is taking over. But we're like, it's never going to happen because there's certain things that a computer just can't do physically. Like when we're sculpting an appliance, we're probing the depth of it. Yeah, maybe a computer can print that out, but it's going to take a long time for that computer. I mean, maybe 10 years from now, and then I'm out of the business and doing haunted houses or something. But it's just one of those things where I don't ever see it happening, even just with a short period of time that I've been in LA. Because professionally, I've only really been hired at least going on like 5 or 6 years professionally in the industry. I've been out there for close to 6-7 years. But yeah, it's just one of those things I never see it going away. Good.
Quick question. Paint time for a full body application. What's your longest or quickest?
A full body paint.
Like a Demogorgon.
It'd be like a week. Yeah, a week or more. Depends on, if they're cracking the whip on you. That's one of the things, it's like, they don't need it, you just keep painting. But if they need it like now, you're just like, all right, guys, let's go. And you have, bigger airbrushes, like I have a smaller airbrush, but you have bigger guns that you can, spatter down a lot of color. Because we're not just like spraying on one solid mass. If you look up close on things, you can see all these little speckles of color, because when you look at your skin, you have freckles and capillaries and all that stuff. So that's what you're seeing, and that's what you're trying to recreate onto like a foam suit or something. He has a question.
Is there one older movie where the special effects really hold up for you? Or the suit, like, from an 80s movie or something, where when you see it today, like, that still stands up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's without a doubt, it's probably Predator. Predator and Alien. It's the two most iconic creature movies ever. It's when I watched behind the scenes on those that I was just like, there's a guy in the suit. And it was just like one of those like eye-opening things when you watch behind the scenes on something like that. That's what inspired me, like, to no end. I was just like, I want to make that. I had no idea how to do it, but I kind of want to make it. And now I'm making it. So I think we have time for looking at my computer. One more question, then I have to get started on the make it. Oh, my mom has a question.
Mom and Dad want to know, when are you coming back home?
Yeah, so I'll be coming back home pretty soon. Because
after the last 5-6 years.
But yeah, the haunted house, as you can see, if you try to grab one of these little flyers that I have, I came here last year and spoke with Michael, and then Norm here, my Uncle Norm here. He wanted bring up this idea. He's like, why don't you talk to FGCU? And I'm like, that's a good point. I had never thought of it. I always wanted to go back to like my high school and try to, because I'm really big about, the haunt can be really successful, but I want to put back into the art program or athletics, because I was big into sports. So I always wanted, like, if a haunted house makes tons of money, I'm putting that into art program, into the athletic department. It's like, why not? If I'm getting helped out so much to create this and bring this to fruition, why not help back and help those who made it happen? That was my whole mentality from the beginning. That's just been the drive for me, is giving back. So I came here, spoke with Michael, and they had this great idea. It's like, why don't we create an internship program to where you get volunteers for a haunted house. They learn a lot about the production, putting the haunted house together and everything. And it's like, well, I don't have something where I can like physically repay them. So what I was wanting to do is having after the haunted house, any volunteers, if we have 50 or 100, I was going to do a special art class. It'll be a week long, or however the schedule works for everybody. There's probably a night class or something for a couple weeks. to where I'll show you how to sculpt, mold, and then cast up your own mask, and then also paint it. So that was something that I was able to give back, and it would be free of charge. I wouldn't charge for the class because you guys are volunteering. And that was the main reason why I came to FGCU, is to try to get volunteers and people that really are passionate about it, because it is a lot of hard work, but it's also a lot of fun. I've been involved with a couple haunted houses, and it's a total blast. So, and the Ledges of Oblivion. So, I know most haunted houses. I'm trying to go a different route with it, where it's more movie oriented and has more of a storyline to the haunt versus your typical slasher haunted house, chainsaws, and all that stuff. I mean, it's great, and there'd be other parts to the haunt that are like that. There are separate buildings, but the physical Legends of Oblivion is more like you're walking through like a storybook. It's like the first year, it's like it's called a chapter 1, so that way it brings like, there's like chapter 2, what's next year, what's the third year gonna be. So we have these crazy rooms that are set up. Like the first room you come into is a 25-foot room, just to kind of, get you where I'm thinking right now. But we have a 25-foot room that completely rotates, right? And there's a oracle that sits in the center, and she kind of tells you your fortune, and the room's spinning around. And it can be kind of dizzy. It's a dizzy effect. So there's going to be a lot of really cool effects, lighting effects that are like state of the art. And basically, there's all these different doors around this room that's spinning around. So you have a group of people that'll be in this room, and then you don't know which door opens up, but then it sends you down like a 40-foot vortex tunnel once like this bookcase slides open. So it's not your typical haunted house. I mean, it's going to be amazing. And I think this area needs it. This area is growing, and there's nothing going to be like it within like. I mean, I don't want it to sound like, oh, it's going to be this big amazing thing, but I like to pursue that. It's like, why can't it be? I mean, the closest place that's going to be really cool is like Disney or Universal or Busch Gardens. So it's like, why not have something that's in our hometown, and it's going to be something that's going to be really amazing. So I think I need to start. Yeah, I need to start this demo, so I'll go ahead and get started on this.